Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Tailosive Tech live on Twitch. I hope you're having a fabulous Tuesday, May 11th. I know that I am. And, oh, you know what I just realized as I went live? I didn't even publish today's tech video. I uploaded it. I forgot to hit the publish button. You know what? I don't want y'all going anywhere. I'm going to publish the video after the live stream, so you'll have something to watch when I'm done. Anyway, I appreciate you guys tuning in because I wanted to address a bit of the paradox I think we have in today's world, because there's this ping-ponging back and forth with big tech companies, and it's a good discussion to have because, you know, monopolies are dangerous in protecting, you know, the free market and making sure that one company doesn't become too powerful. I think is fair. I think that's a good discussion to have, but as long as there is a discussion. If we're shutting each other down and saying, oh, shut up, I'm right, you're wrong, that's not a discussion. That's where we don't get anywhere. So that's why I was thinking this would make sense to do as a Twitch stream better than anything. Edited video, I don't really get to interact with you guys as much. I can just kind of reply in the comments best I can, but then I'm going to go around these bots and everything. But yeah, essentially, the main root of a lot of this is how Epic is going after Apple and their App Store guidelines about how Apple's too greedy and 30% revenue cut is too high and all that. But what's interesting is the fact that in other app markets, whether it be Xbox or Xbox and Microsoft or PlayStation with Sony or Nintendo, is they've all had these cuts for a while, but sometimes Epic's justification for it, or as I've seen many people's justification for it, is, well, that's how they make their money. See, the consoles are not super profitable, so because it's not super profitable, we don't see it as that big a deal. Whereas Apple is already profitable with their hardware sales. They can make money off of iPads, iPhones, Apple Watches. They have all these other revenue streams. So why do they also need to have a profitable or extremely profitable App Store revenue collecting a 30% cut from developers and applications and how people use it? This is where the paradox starts to confuse me, okay? So, like, the reason Apple's being accused of a monopoly is because they have pretty much end-to-end complete control over their own devices, which always felt a little bit backwards of logic to me, because I'm like, well, Apple's not the only app store. Apple's not the only one making smartphones. Granted, yes, they've created insanely popular smartphones, insanely popular app stores that have become very, very popular for developers to optimize for and all that. But the people made that happen. Apple got to be the most popular. Apple got to be the most successful because we as a society, as a customer base, as a free market, opted for Apple's App Store. And a lot of us did. Not all of us, obviously. Play Store is still overall more users, I think, as a whole. Android is more common than iOS in a global sense. In the United States, I think iOS might be a tad more ahead, but they're pretty split. It's not like 90% Apple, 10% Android. I think it's like 51 versus 49, and then it goes back and forth. Sometimes it's 55 versus 44. They're pretty split down the middle. So what's funny to me is when big companies like Epic are advocating that Apple should be more like a less successful app market that has resulted in people spending less money on the app market. So you may not like that Apple takes a 30% cut or enforces people to use Apple Pay, or Apple has to approve every app and Apple doesn't allow side loading. I saw that coming up in my tweet that I made. I wanted to kind of get the general consensus from my own audience. The poll I ran was essentially what side on the Apple versus Epic case do you take with this legal dispute? And 84% of my audience sided with Apple, but even though only 16% of people sided with Epic, there was a lot of replies on this tweet as to why people are split down the middle, or they're not completely on Apple or Epic's side. They're kind of torn on the issue. And I saw a lot of them saying that Apple is being a monopoly by not allowing side loading of apps on iOS, which personally I think makes sense for them not to allow, because there's so many negative ways that can go. If you start allowing side loading or non-verified Apple apps getting on the App Store, then you result in more malware and you result in less trustworthy apps that you can download that might take advantage of you or scam you, or, you know, there's all kinds of drawbacks when you allow non-approved apps onto your devices. And Apple is just the type of company to say, we want to make sure that doesn't happen. Well, I agree with you that the iPad is as powerful as a Mac, but the software limits it. And I completely agree there are benefits to sideloading, but to act like there are only benefits is naive and arrogant, in my opinion. To act like, well, we should just allow sideloading because then I could do this one thing that I like to do, and I can't do that right now. It is so much more complicated than that, because you act like if we open this gate, this metaphorical gate or this entryway, that only good things will come out of this gate. Only good things will happen if we stop making Apple review and approve each app on the App Store. Cybersecurity is a thing. And there's all kinds of drawbacks and negatives that come to allowing sideloading and making apps or links that go around on social media that can get downloaded and installed without people knowing about it. On the Mac, you have to change settings to allow sideloading, which normal people won't do. That's true. And I think Apple was very intentional after they built the Mac, that when they were developing a new platform like iOS and iPadOS, they were like, we don't want it to be as necessarily open as the Mac was. We're going to do this one differently. Apple devices don't have virus versus what happens to Android as an everyday thing. Macs can get viruses. They're definitely less common, but there is malware on the Mac if you're not careful. But I can totally understand Apple wanting to ensure that viruses and malware or scam apps or apps that don't do what they claim they're going to do, keeping that market basically dead by not allowing sideloading. If they did allow sideloading, there would be I would say, a much larger market of apps that show up in ads that say, download this app to get this feature, or get this free money if you download this app, and they get to bypass all that if they don't have to worry about Apple reviewing each of their applications. It falls into the same line for a better safe ecosystem, which I think we can actively see by the numbers of people buying iPhones, and iPhones still being so popular, and the App Store always being top in the charts with best revenue out of all app markets. Like, they get so many people comfortably spending all that money. I think it's because there's so much of a security aspect that Apple has built for themselves. People feel comfortable buying stuff on the App Store, and people feel comfortable dropping that kind of money and knowing that if they get an app, it's probably going to do what they expect that it's going to do. And they know that Apple's going to get the backlash if there's third-party applications that aren't approved by Apple getting installed on their iPhone that scam you or take advantage of you. People are going to get mad at Apple for that. They will. It's just inevitable. It's even if it's not Apple's fault or doesn't fall within Apple's jurisdiction, they'll still be like, Apple, why do you allow such a thing? And tying this back into the revenue argument of earlier as well, Apple's profitable in other sectors, whereas Xbox and PlayStation, the 30% cut is how they make their money, whereas the consoles aren't that profitable. It's like, so if Apple decided, hypothetically speaking here, I try to look at things from multiple angles. I think it's very easy to fall into all kinds of different controversial tech subjects and just look at it as one way. It's like, this isn't fair, Apple greedy, Apple bad. I try to see one way of looking at the issue and then take it from the opposite direction and be like, okay, I could look at this very surface level and just say, yep, Apple greedy, Apple bad, they're evil. Or I could try to look at it down another angle and think, okay, why would they want to ensure such a thing? Why would they want to keep something a specific way? And part of it made me think, like, wouldn't Apple also be accused of being a monopoly if they decided to have insanely low revenue cut on the App Store? Because then other app stores wouldn't be able to compete. I don't know if I'm the first person. I'm probably not the first person to think of this, but I haven't seen it brought up on internet discussions very much. But let's go into hypothetical land for a second. Okay, you're right. Apple makes a ton of money from hardware sales and even iCloud and Apple Music, and let's just assume Apple Card and Apple Arcade, TV Plus. Let's assume those turn a profit. I don't think they all do, but let's assume they're all very profitable. Apple's making gobs and gobs of money from iPhone sales. So because they make all this revenue, Apple decides, guess what? We are so filthy stinking rich. We make so much money from hardware. We have decided that the App Store, we're not going to allow sideloading. We're going to keep everything as oh no, Starlink, no, come back. Thank you. I was just like, man, Starlink's doing so well today. Oh well, it's back now. Apple's doing so well with all of their other divisions. iPhone is topping the charts, so much profit. You know, people are buying the Apple Silicon Macs and they're making so much profit that they decide App Store, we're still going to approve all our apps. We're still not going to allow side loading. We're still going to let developers have to optimize for our guidelines and all that, but we're going to have 0% revenue cut. We're not going to take any money from developers' revenue, right? So if you develop an app, if Epic develops an app, or if Bethesda or Rockstar, whatever big company decides we want to put our games on the App Store, we're going to take a 0% cut because we make so much money elsewhere. We're just going to lose money on our maintenance of the App Store. We're going to let developers have all the tools for free. And because we're so profitable, there's a 0% cut. Well, now, how do you feel like other communities out there, whether it be Sony or Microsoft or Nintendo, who are losing money on hardware sales, hoping that they get a ton of money made by flooding the market with their hardware and then capitalizing off of the revenue cut, like a Google Play Store, still taking 30%. And I don't think Google's making any money from hardware. I believe it's an open secret that they lose money on pretty much every Google Home Mini they sell. I believe it costs over $30 to make, but most of the time they either give them away or sell them for $30. But they're like, we get all that money back from services. If Apple's already profitable and decides we're going to price our service at a loss just so that developers could get paid more, now this comes into a similar situation of Apple Music versus Spotify. Spotify is like purely banking on their free tier with ads and then their monthly subscription option with Spotify Premium, but they don't pay artists, they don't pay creators as much as Apple does, because Apple can afford, as a giant corporation, $2 trillion, to pay artists more and make less money off of each song that's played because they're a bigger corporation than Spotify is. Spotify is trying to survive solely. They don't have hardware sales or anything like that. So they have to charge the same amount as Apple Music and pay artists less, which makes Apple have a severe advantage in that demographic. So if Apple were to go ahead and decide we're going to have 0% revenue cut on the App Store, then wouldn't the federal government look at Apple as being anti-competitive because they're pricing something so low that no other app market can compete with it? Developers all knew that they could put stuff on the App Store, which was secure and, reliable, and there was a ton of money being spent there, and they knew they could make way more money by optimizing their app for the iPad and iPhone instead of the Play Store. That would be an unfair advantage, right? Like, so how many different angles do you want to take the unfair advantage thing? Like, because I feel like it can go in multiple directions. It was the same argument I made of like, so when Apple enters a market, they get accused of, being a monopoly and the anti-competitive behavior. They release something like the AirTag, and pretty much everyone goes, holy crap, the AirTag is pretty much infinitely better than Tile in every way. So Apple's being a monopoly. They took the Tile idea and took it away from them, and now the company's going to die. But also sometimes Apple leaves a market, and people just get upset when they leave something. Like Apple has decided we're not going to include charge bricks with the iPhones anymore. But Apple doesn't get credit for letting Anchor now have a bigger piece of the market. They used to include charge bricks with every iPhone, but now they don't. So shouldn't that send sales for Anchor, making cheaper, very powerful charge bricks that work with the iPhone? Doesn't their market see an increase in sales? Or, Apple used to sell Wi-Fi routers that a lot of people like, the airport time capsule things. They just straight up decided they don't want to make those anymore. So does that market give thanks to Apple for leaving that to be open to third parties a bit more? Like, it goes both ways, and I don't feel like that's being entertained as regularly. I agree, Tile is worse. Tile app is bad, and I've seen the setups for Tile. They're not very... AirTag is better. I haven't seen it. I've watched all the videos. There were a lot of people telling me, Drew, you need to check out the Galaxy Smart Tag. I've seen the videos. I've seen the app. I've seen the interface. The Galaxy Smart Tag kind of sucks. The battery's worse. It looks clunkier. The speaker sucks. The app sucks. The Find My network is way bigger than whatever network this Galaxy Smart Tag is using. Also, Tile is working with Amazon on their like sidewalk equivalents. I don't understand why they thought that was the good move. Like, I get that they're mad at Apple, and that's probably why they don't want to optimize for Find My, but Amazon doesn't have as plentiful of an accessory market as Apple does. I know Amazon has a bunch of like smart speakers, but those aren't going to be out and about in public everywhere. That's going to be like in people's houses. So if you want to have like a big connected network that can securely and in an encrypted manner ping other devices that you lose, Amazon, I don't know why they want to partner with them. They don't have like a bunch of devices sitting around everywhere. If anything, it would make more sense to partner with Google on something. Like every Android phone can act as a beacon for you to track down your items. But Amazon, like they have a bunch of hardware sales, but they're not like out and about. Thank you for the bits, Matt Apple. And thank you, Scott S3, for the Twitch Prime sub for 30 months. Scott's the guy we just had on the podcast. That was fun. And Mike, I don't know when you subscribed, 2 hours ago, but thank you, Mike, for the Twitch Prime for 10 months. Appreciate that. Okay, I'm going to interact with the chat a little bit here, see what you guys are saying. The Only Luke says, Nintendo makes profit by selling the Switch, but still Epic says they are entitled for the 30%. That's why Epic lawyers don't bring up the Switch, even though Fortnite is on the Switch. Yeah, they're definitely... Well, I've seen what Jay was mentioning on Twitter is that they're looking at Apple as the big player, so if they can knock Apple down to 15%, then they assume they can knock everybody down. And Apple's getting a lot of hate already for anti-competitive behavior. But I don't think many people are entertaining the alternative. That's what's kind of annoying me about this whole mindset of Apple being too big, Apple being too powerful. So you're saying if Apple has the resources and the capability to make a more reliable, better encrypted, more safe geo-tracking device that's more integrated, that's easier to set up, and better for the consumer, if they have the capability to do that, they should just say no, because that would be mean to Tile. Let's not release that product. Like, I don't know. That doesn't make sense to me. Sorry. I'll read the chat here. Scott says, Spotify's logic also makes no sense. Do Walmart and Target have an unfair advantage because they can sell their products in their own stores right next to the competitors for lower prices? Yeah, they do. I think Marquez talked about it on the latest episode of Waveform. No, Starlink, come back. Wait. You can do it. You can do it, Starlink. There we go. Sorry, it froze for a second. Just when I think it's doing fine, it freaks out on me. We're back. Yeah, the grocery stores they mentioned on Waveform were accustomed to taking much more than 30% of the revenue for third parties that were putting their stuff on the... Come on, Starlink. You were fine just a second ago. Maybe I'll turn off Sidecar. I don't know if that's hurting it. I'll turn it off. See if that helped. Hey, Starlink, pooping, we back. We back, please. Tile could add themselves to the Find My network. Just saying, it's open to everyone. Yeah, I know. I can see when Starlink freaks out. I'm sorry. I'm not. It's like it works so much of the time that I'm not willing to spend the extra money for Comcast because Comcast sucks. But yeah, it's bizarre how it loves to act up right when I'm streaming. The grocery stores take like 40 to 60% of revenue for third parties. And yeah, Target and Walmart have their own in-name brands that compete directly with third parties. So it's, to me, 30% is pretty fair considering 15% is for the smaller developers, which is even lower than most other industries. And YouTube takes 45% of ad revenue that YouTubers create. So I don't see a bunch of other regions or areas where the third-party markets are doing much, much better at 15%. I haven't seen that argument been made, but all I've just seen is big companies saying, like, we would like more money, please. Thank you. Let's see. The problem with the charging bricks is that they are giving fast charging cables, but getting rid of the charging bricks. Yes, it was just the regular charging cable, and they're only getting rid of the 5-watt charging bricks. People would not complain as much. I'm not sure I understand what you're saying, Ed. charging bricks is that they are giving fast charging cables. Well, they're giving Type-C to Lightning, which I think makes sense. If you were to include USB-A to Lightning, that would be encouraging people to keep buying the old dated charge bricks. So it's like, okay, we're going to give you a cable. You don't have to use that cable. I think Apple's general consensus was, keep using the charger you're already using. And if you do need a charger, then now you can get a fast charger for pretty cheap, opposed to making you buy a whole separate USB-C Lightning cable and a fast charger. So I still think they made the right call there, but there's a lot of people that disagree. I think the argument is that Apple Music provide their own hosting for the 30%, but Spotify have to pay the same 30% but cover their own hosting costs. Yeah, I get that Apple has an advantage. We all know that. It's pretty obvious that when you've developed the App Store and you've developed the hardware and the software for a product, you don't have to worry about as big a revenue cut as someone like Spotify, who is severely piggybacking off of everybody else's hardware and software. Spotify didn't create their own phone or create their own operating system. They're just trying to directly sell a service through other people's hardware, so they have a cut to put up with. That does put them at a disadvantage, yes, but I don't think that should mean Apple just can't make a music streaming service now, right? Is that the alternative? I'm not exactly seeing what people like. Should Apple just provide free hosting for Spotify? Because that would give Apple less of an advantage and Spotify more of an advantage. And Apple would be losing money on a third party competing with their own service. So I'm just trying to entertain the alternative. I completely agree that, yes, in the business world, you're all tackling ideas of how to make your product or your service have significant advantages over the competition, which is why this gets a little bit messy for me, because the whole point of the free market and having companies compete with each other is so that they can try to make a better product and service than the other. It's not about everybody just having the exact same product and service with the exact same specs and just a different logo, and then we let the free market decide which logo is better. That's not what the free market is. It's about figuring out, like Apple saying, hey, we can develop chips that are faster and more power efficient than Intel, so we're switching to our own chips. We don't need Intel anymore. So that can save us money, and it can make us produce more powerful machines that now have a substantial advantage over our competitors. That's not anti-competition. That's just we're trying to have a better service, better product than the other guy. And yeah, it just so happens that the bigger, richer companies can sometimes develop better stuff than the others. But it can go too far. I agree. If you have a monopoly, like I did with Comcast, where Xfinity is the only internet provider in the area and they keep raising their rates and their service sucks and their customer service is crap and they sign you into contracts and there's literally no one else I can switch to, that's a problem. Yeah, I agree. It can go too far, and it's figuring out when it's not too far and when it is too far that I think is worth discussing it and interesting to discuss. Let's see. Imagine explaining that to a caveman. My magic flat smart rock is not allowing my magic circle on the top of my weird-looking cave to connect to the star-looking magic rocks in the sky. Yes, explain this all to a caveman. Okay, King Wing says, the problem is Apple doesn't need the commission. They already get money developers through the developer fee for being a developer. They need to get rid of the commission and the rules that say you have to give 30% to Apple to sell things, and their app that needs to go away, that all of that needs to go away. I don't understand how you're saying it needs to go away. They've clearly, many hundreds of businesses have been built with that 30% cut, and now Apple's making it 15% for smaller developers. The developer fee, I don't know why you're bringing that. That's almost nothing. That pays for nothing. $100 a year? That's less than Amazon Prime. If you're making less than that, you're not making a super successful. The developer fee is not what's preventing a successful business. If you're not making $100 a year with your app, you're not trying to start your own. But man, I was trying to start my own app company, but there was this $100 annual fee, and that just took it all away. I couldn't do it. It's like less than $10 a month. That's not a huge reason. It's not a huge reason this isn't working out. That's just preventing the trolls, I think, of anything. That's just preventing people from filling the app store with, needless fart apps and prank apps and that kind of thing. It's just preventing just having a simple entry point to say like, okay, we don't want any loser coming around with a stupid app idea and submitting it, because all these apps that get submitted have to be reviewed by Apple staff, and that costs them money. Cyber Octoling says a company is anti-competitive when they use their size to push others out of an existing market, such as Amazon losing money on shipping to push others out. An ecosystem isn't anti-competitive since it wasn't there before. Like the iPhone isn't an industry, it is a product, so I don't know how it can be considered a monopoly. Well, that's an interesting way of looking at it. Like, I think we talked about why we thought Google Photos should be considered somewhat anti-competitive and more of a monopoly, because Google priced their cloud storage service insanely low, lower than anybody else could potentially offer. Literally, I did not see a single company come anywhere close to the affordability of Google Photos, allowing you to upload any picture, any video, almost at full res, not quite full res, but insanely high res, for free with no data cap. For years, they were offering that, and it was pretty much driving other storage services and cloud storages out of business, because no one could compete with Google. And then as soon as it drove them out, now Google's taking away the unlimited storage option. So they had that service for a while, pushed a lot of third parties out of the industry, and then get rid of the free service as soon as everybody else is out of business. That, to me, is a bit more anti-competitive. It's like, we're going to lose money on all of this to kill off competitors, and then once the competitors are gone, we raise rates again. Whereas I don't see, I agree with what Michael is saying here. It's iPhone isn't an industry. That's a new product category. It wasn't in existence before. Yeah, that's what he said. A company is anti-competitive when they use their size to push others out of an existing market. Let's see. Tile CEO was VP at EA and GoPro. Now you know why Tile is sinking. Well, I mean, AirTags is why Tile is sinking, let's be honest. By the way, Apple did not put white bezels on the new M1 iMac. Apparently, it is actually a distant gray, according to Apple Explains YouTube channel. I don't care if it's a slight gray. It still looks bad. It's not the color of the pixels when they're off. The developer fee should stay. The commission shouldn't go. They don't need both, is what I'm saying. I don't think we can tell them what they need and don't need. I mean, we can sit from afar and say, yeah, you're rich enough, you don't need more money. But we don't know about all the money and time and energy that goes into maintaining the App Store, and how much money Apple loses on the cloud storage and maintaining all those servers. The developer fee is essentially the developer fee is paying for your seat at Quadruple UDC, as Stefan said. Yeah, it's such a small. It's less than $10 a month. Apple Music costs more than the developer fee. It's the commission is when you have a bunch of people maintaining apps and the apps are using Apple server space, and Apple has to watch over these apps and analyze them and approve them. That costs Apple money. They have to pay people full time to maintain all that stuff. $100 a year is barely paying for, I bet, like 1 second of the amount of money they have to spend per hour just to pay people to maintain the App Store and the servers and everything. So I don't think one or the other has to go away. My point is it anti-competitive to have an app store that doesn't allow side loading, or a platform that doesn't allow side loading? It's a choice. You may not agree with that choice, but should it be the type of thing where a government steps in and says, like, this isn't allowed? That's where I happen to disagree. I'm like, okay, you want to put non-App Store apps on your phone, get an Android. And I think there's plenty of options in the Android field, whether you want to go Galaxy Store or Play Store or side-loading apps on Android, whatever you want to do, you have options. I feel like it would be a bit different if we were in a world where Google didn't exist and it was only Apple and that was the only way to buy a phone. But that's not where we are. I 100% agree the Google Photos thing is anti-competitive, especially since they raised their prices later. Yeah, that's not really what I see Apple doing here. If anything, they've made the revenue cut lower from the small business program, now allowing people who make under $1 million a year to have a 15% cut. That has made it cheaper and easier for small devs and smaller businesses to make their apps or whatever on the App Store. It's gotten cheaper over the past 10 years, not more expensive. Apple Store should take 12% of the profits and 88 go to developers, big or small. That should be what Apple does, but that's what Epic Games does on their store. But Epic Games' store isn't as successful. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, they don't have evidence that when you make a cheaper, lower fee app store, it results in a better community that spends more money on the store. Like, I'm pretty sure Epic does a lot of stuff at a loss because they give away a ton of apps and they give away a bunch of games through their store. Like, Steam is far more popular than Epic, and Steam takes 30%. Let's see. Do you listen to the new Siri voices on iOS 14.5? No, I haven't. I don't use Siri very much, to be honest with you. I don't use digital assistants that much. Google or Siri, it's just kind of like, let me do it. I don't think Apple is being anti-competitive at all. Like you said, they make it cheaper over time. But that's part of the paradox, though, is that when Apple makes it cheaper and more entry level that competitors can't compete with, people are also going to claim that's anti-competitive. They're like, well, I can't make my service as cheap as Apple can because they're making all this money from elsewhere. So it's like, well, what do? They can't make it more expensive. They can't make it less expensive. Didn't Google originally justify their 30% cut on the Play Store because it launched as the original Android market? I don't recall how they justified it, but I just know that 30% was kind of it was actually below the standard at the time. Like, if you go back and watch when Steve Jobs announced the App Store for the iPhone, people were applauding and people were very proud that Apple chose 30% because other industries at the time were doing much more than that. And they still are. There still are a bunch of app markets and different communities that take more than 30%. So I don't find it anti-competitive personally. I just think Apple has chose a different direction from the competition, which I would applaud and say is a good thing. If one major player in the tech market with their app store and their hardware has decided we want to make a platform that is more open, that you can sideload apps and install alternative app stores, and you want to allow more customization of the hardware and the software that we don't approve, and you can install stuff outside of that, all right, that's their choice. I'm for that company. If that's how they want to run their market, that's how Google wants to run Android, good for you. Government doesn't need to step in and tell that company how to maintain their app market. But if another company does it, let's ignore the size for a second. Let's say Apple was 1% of the market, like India, let's not pretend they're half the market. If one portion of the tech market that's very small just says, hey, you know what? We see a lot of people doing these open sideloading apps and alternative app stores, and it kind of results in a lot of malware and a lot of viruses and, kind of scammy apps, and we want to avoid that. So for our platform, let's make it more locked down, and let's approve every app that goes on there and make sure it's not being deceptive and it's not doing anything that it's not advertising it's supposed to do. And let's just try to make it more secure and encrypted and friendly, user-friendly, like Apple Pay support and all that, and no payment pop-ups for any third parties. Let's just try to make it a bit more locked down. Let's assume that Apple or whatever this pretend company is like 1% of the market, and Google is 99% of the sideloading. Should the government step in on that 1% company and say, hey, you need to allow sideloading like Google. You need to allow alternative app stores like Google does. And that other company's like, aren't they doing fine? Can't we just do our own thing here? We just want to make a more secure, encrypted app store. In my opinion, no. Like, if a company wants to make a more secure app store that's more locked down and less prone to malware, less prone to alternative app stores and sideloading apps that are going to take advantage of customers, and they just say, we want to approve everything, but then a bunch of people decide, hey, we actually care about that, and a huge demographic of customers say, yeah, we actually do want to lock it down and make it more secure so that our customers feel more confident spending money buying applications or paying for services on our market, on our app store. We want them to feel safer, and then that results in them, even though it's a smaller chunk, iOS App Store is smaller user base than the Google Play Store, it still accounts for more of the money spent. So what's actually better for developers here? Would you rather have a app market where they don't spend as much money because they're worried about getting scammed and they're worried about privacy? Or would you rather have a bit more locked down where people feel more confident spending money on their phone, spending more money on apps and services and stuff? Yeah, I don't see it personally. I feel like Apple should allow people to sideload, as it does give the owner of the device more control over it and allows them to make their own decisions, but I can understand why they want to protect users. I see both sides. I know people can just get an Android, but some people like Apple's hardware. I also think having choice is a good thing. I think having choice is a great thing for both the customer and the company. I don't think we should force the company to be like other companies that are statistically less successful. We have no proven evidence that smartphone companies and tablet companies that allow sideloading are more successful than companies that are not. We actually have quite the opposite, to be honest. Apple has proven evidence that when you don't allow sideloading and you have a more locked down platform, it actually results in a more successful one. I don't think that should mean the government steps in and decides all app markets should be locked down and each company should enforce the guidelines and manually approve each app. But if a company does want to allow for that, I think they should. If Apple decides that for their customer base, they want to protect their users and they don't want to allow sideloading, I respect that Apple should be allowed to make that choice. Like, on the same subject, I know we've done this one to death, but I don't like white bezels. I think white bezels are ugly. But I don't think the government should step in and say Apple has to have black bezels. Well, hold on a second. No, I'm kidding. Obviously, I don't think design or choice like that, or any kind of software choice that Apple wants to enforce, necessarily the government should step in and say, hey, you can't do it that way. I support the right for the company to decide what they think is best for them. And they may make the wrong decision. They may make a decision that customers don't like. That's fine. Like, a lot of customers didn't like Apple removing the headphone jack, but I still think they should be allowed to make those poor decisions. I don't think it's a good idea for Samsung to release foldables, especially don't release foldables in 2019. They weren't ready yet, but they had the right to do that. That was their choice. So getting your own personal preferences interweaved with what should and shouldn't be allowed legally, I think is the danger. Apple were 0% of the market before they launched the iPhone. That's true. They came out of nothing. Mike says, anti-competitive implies there is some competition, but the App Store isn't competing with anything. The iPhone is. I don't know how an app market can be anti-competitive just by not allowing sideloading. Like, it would be different if Apple was preventing App Store devs from making their apps for Android, but they aren't. Yeah, that's true. People can still make their games for the Play Store and the App Store. Apple's not forcing them to not do that. Let's see. An anti-competitive app store would be something where Apple was like, hey, devs, we will reduce your cut to 0% if you don't bring your app to Android, which is not at all what's going on. That's true, because that would be actively encouraging your demographic to ditch the competitor's demographic. I agree. That would be more anti-competitive. In James Land says, we don't want a clone of one company to be another. For example, nobody wants another YouTube clone because YouTube is the best video platform. It currently is very hard to beat. I personally think there are video platforms that may be better than YouTube, but they don't have the size and people don't want to move. So, yeah, why don't we accuse YouTube of being anti-competitive? That argument never comes up, even though they're like the only massive video streaming platform that YouTube, is doing a terrible job running. They've got all kinds of problems. We're like, fix the copyright strike system on YouTube. It doesn't make any sense. This has no logical due process. It assumes everybody's guilty until proven innocent, and then even when you're proven innocent, they still penalize you. And meanwhile, YouTube's like, let's change the quality setting. We have to get rid of the 1080p option and just change it to auto, and you have to go into another set. It's like, let's leave YouTube. Let's switch to something else. It's like, no, can't really. I guess there's a couple. Nebula, Curiosity Stream, and you go over there, it's like 5 people. 1,000 bits from Chris Norton. Thank you. How many videos do you upload a day as your schedule has changed? At the beginning of the year, I was trying to do 4, but it wasn't good for my mental health. I was working too much every day, and I needed more time to myself to relax and kind of recharge, mentally speaking. So I slowed down doing the 4 a day. Now I'm basically doing 2 or 3, depending on what's going on. Sometimes I got work to do, work around the house or other projects I'm working on where I'm helping a friend or a family member or my wife with something. So 2 is pretty much the minimum. And then other times I do 3. Anyway, thank you for the bits, Chris. I don't understand PlayStation and Xbox fans cheering for Epic. If Epic wins, they will sue Microsoft and Sony to force the Epic Store onto their consoles, and then they can't sell at a loss anymore. Do they really want to pay $1,300 for a PS5 instead of $500? Yeah, there might be some truth to that. If they couldn't get their revenue cut through their stores, they might have to get it elsewhere. I upload my videos at 1080 60, and it almost never ends up that way when it's on my channel. Really? It should. How much of a cut of ad revenue does YouTube take? You should sue them for being a monopoly, Drew. Yeah, 45%. It's been that way since the beginning of the partner program. Every view I get and you guys watch ads on or watch with YouTube Premium, they get 45% of that cut. Much more than 30. Why don't they make Twitch the next YouTube? It's because it has very little to do with the features that the service has and everything to do with how can you get people to move. It's not easy to get people to move to a different platform. Even if the other platform is better, it doesn't matter. Oh, I see what you mean, Stefan. 1080 at 60. Yeah, it doesn't go there. Let's see. Maybe if every Android developer had dedicated teams to help optimize their apps on the many Android devices, it wouldn't be as big of a complaint, at least the mainstream Android devices. Yeah, maybe people would be more comfortable dropping money on the Play Store if they optimize their apps a bit better. I don't know. Maybe they could have better success if they were a tad more locked down. I don't know, but I don't think the government should force them to do whatever. If they don't want to do it, they don't want to do it. Sorry for the lag. I see it. It's lag. Starlink, come on. You can do it. Thank you, Chris, for the bits. I really like Twitch. If Twitch added uploaded videos, I'd switch my favorite creators did. I think they do. I believe you can upload videos to Twitch. It's just people don't go onto Twitch looking for that type of thing, so it doesn't happen. Excuse me. If Epic makes Apple change the cut to less than 30% or less than the Play Store, then wouldn't that be anti-competitive because all devs would want to put their app on the App Store to lose less money? Yeah. I feel like if you're arguing that Apple has an unfair advantage in that regard, then if they lower their cut to 5%, then Google's going to have an unfair, everyone's going to want to optimize for iOS and not Google. So, yeah. I feel like the anti-competitive claims will be the biggest meme of 2022. Yeah. I do find it bizarre when they say that's a monopoly on a platform that you're only referring to a single app store. Apple has a monopoly on the Apple App Store. I did find that kind of meme worthy. That's when I started making the jokes of like Netflix has a monopoly on the Netflix streaming catalog. The shows that Netflix makes in-house are going to do better than the shows that try to get on Netflix or something. I don't know how it's something like that. That's another one. Walmart has a monopoly on what is inside Walmart. Yeah, it's because that's their business. YouTube has a monopoly on the videos that get uploaded to YouTube. Like that is pretty meme worthy to me. Tesla has a monopoly on Tesla's vehicles. That's unfair. Taylosive has a monopoly on what is posted on Taylosive Tech. That's true. If we're just going to refer to individual tiny subsets of the market and say that is a monopoly, then yeah, there's a ton of monopolies. Pretty much anything is a monopoly if you think of it that way. So when people say Apple has a monopoly on something that they created, I think that's the fundamental core definition that I find hilarious. I don't think a company can have a demographic on something that they invented. Comcast didn't invent the internet, which is why I think it's okay to say that Comcast has a monopoly in many markets. Not all markets, because some markets have more options to choose from. But especially in the market I was in, Comcast was the only internet provider. And they were charging whatever they wanted, and their charges were getting more expensive. Like that's a monopoly. Whereas App Store is not the only App Store. iPhone isn't the only phone. If it was, I would maybe agree with you. Even for a lot of different demographics, I can't think of a ton of demographics that are like, we can only buy iPhones here. It's like, where is that? Point me to a country where you can only buy iPhones, because I want to live there. Just kidding. Oh, I forgot I filled this Apple bottle with water. Water Plus. Have you guys heard of Apple's new subscription model? I hate Apple services. I hate that they're pushing so much, pop-ups within their iOS applications. But I also don't think that the government should step in and force them to not allow that. That's different. Perseverance has a monopoly on the whole planet of Mars. That's true. The Earth has a monopoly on life. Ooh, that's deep. I hope they don't. We're suing Earth. 100 bits from Chris. Again, thank you very much. He says Apple makes good stuff. I agree. I'm excited for this new iPad. I'm kind of annoyed. Oh, we got 10 days to go until we get the new iPad. I'm getting my second vaccination on May 21st, so I'm really hoping that all the packages I ordered get here before my appointment. Comcast doesn't have a monopoly anywhere in the UK. Kingston is the only town in the UK that has only one ISP available. Yeah, it is region specific, but yeah, I don't even think Comcast is in the UK or something. That was different. They were actively undercutting Netscape and had their whole embrace, extend, extinguish thing. Oh, Microsoft being fined because Internet Explorer was pre-installed and thus pushed by Microsoft. Oh, that was a thing, wasn't it? California is anti-competitive because Texas can't tax California residents. Oh, man. You an Apple sheep, Drew. You shouldn't hate for somebody wanting Apple services. I'm not hating someone for wanting them. I just hate when I'm trying to use an app and then I get a pop-up within the app for me to use a service that I've already tried and canceled. Like, that's just my experience. I'm an Apple sheep, but there's all kinds of team player hate we have. There's like, I talked about it with my cousin the other night. Like, he's a big fan of the A's, which I believe is baseball. I don't keep up with sports, but he was saying, like, he watched my video on the Apple sheep thing. By the way, my cousin's not an Apple guy. He uses Android. And he was like, every team sport or every fandom, like, there are so many Star Wars fans that only like 2 Star Wars movies and they hate the other 7. There are so many fans of sports teams that get super mad at people on their team or people that get angry at how they perform a certain game. That's still their team. They're still an A's fan, or they're a Dodgers fan, or a Giants fan. They're still advocates for that team, and they're rooting for them, and they're always cheering for them. They're buying the merch. They're wearing the merchandise. But they still get mad. They still get angry when they don't win. It's not really any different with Apple. There's a bunch of stuff Apple does, and I'm Team Apple. I'm an Apple sheep. I'm going to follow everything they do. But it's because I'm such a big fan that when my expectations aren't met or they don't do as well as I want them to do, there's going to be hate. There's going to be backlash for that, and I'm going to express my frustration. Same thing with Star Wars. I loved Star Wars growing up, but there's a bunch of stupid decisions they made in that film series that I just despise. I still love Star Wars, but I hate a lot of the choices they made. Just because you're a fan of something, or even I would go as far as to say as a sheep of something, I still consider myself an Apple sheep just because of how closely I follow everything they do, how much I talk about them. Some people's definition of Apple sheep might be, you like everything they do without question, but I don't think that's actually a thing. I don't think there's that many people that will defend it literally regardless. Even very loyal Apple sheep I've seen complain. There's a few Apple sheep that I've seen them defend Apple on everything, and then every once in a while they go, yeah, but that doesn't quite make sense. Biggest fans are often the harshest critics. That's true. I can agree with your cousin about that. Every single basketball fan hates at least one thing on that team, but they will show up to every single game nevertheless. Exactly, yeah. It's the same thing with Apple. Matt Apple donated 20 bits and said, do you think that the John Leak MacBook Air is something we will see? Maybe. It seemed fairly cryptic. I I think it's still too early to tell. Like, I don't think we're that close to the next MacBook Air refresh, to be honest with you. I think the MacBook Air was rarely updated annually that I can remember. And we got our last MacBook Air in November. So I don't think we're going to get another one until at least end of this year, which is not terribly close. Maybe next year I could see a MacBook Air. But from all the polls I've been running, because I'm curious, I'm seeing some people on Twitter and some people in comments saying, I like the white bezels and the white keyboard. And then I'm seeing a lot of people say, no, I hate it. It sucks. And from most of the polls I've been seeing, looking at myself, people do not care for this white bezel thing. By the way, the community section on YouTube is all messed up. I've got 4.3 thousand votes on YouTube right now on this poll. And this is in 2 hours. It's only going to go up from here. 4.3 thousand people voted, and 87% prefer black bezels with a black keyboard over white bezels with a white keyboard. And I have to imagine Apple's polling people and probably getting similar results to me. I get that there's some hype in the industry. There's some, I can't compete. I'm not the industry's favorite Apple YouTuber. People like Max Tech or Prosser, people love talking about white bezel Macs and white keyboard Macs because it's retro and retro's in and retro's cool. But from at least the crowds I'm polling, I don't see a lot of people into it. Did you ever think of what happened to the woman that sued Apple because she didn't know the XS had a notch? I'm pretty sure the judge just threw that out. I bet he saw that court case and was like, nah. Are you waiting for the M1X to the iMac Pro refresh? Because it seems they're going with a trend of consumer and pro products. I don't really see much of a trend. I see a lot of people making up trends in their mind. Because on one hand, you have people that are like, white bezels are for the entry model things. But on the other hand, the MacBook Air has black bezels and got the M1 chip. And MacBook Pro has black bezels and got the M1 chip. So I'm not following this trend. I saw them try something very weird and different with the 24-inch iMac. And then I saw it divide a bunch of people and split everyone down the middle. And everyone's just assuming, well, this is the new trend. This is what everything's going to be. And now I'm like, I don't know. I've seen Apple appear to go down a path before and then steer a different way, whether it be 3D touch, say like this is the future, this is what we're going to bring, and everyone was assuming, yeah, eventually we're going to get 3D touch on iPads. And instead they were like, nah, we don't want to go this route, and then they end up removing 3D touch or the touch bar. First they ditch the escape key, and then eventually they get rid of the what's it called? Scissor switch mechanism on all their keyboards. And they go all in on butterfly keyboards for MacBook Pros and MacBook Airs and the MacBook. And then they decide this is too problematic. People don't like the butterfly keyboard. So then they switch back. Then they bring back the escape key. I've seen them steer away from having the Mac make a noise when you turn it on. It used to play a sound. And then in 2016, they started turning that off. And now the Macs don't make a sound anymore. But then everyone preferred the sound, so now they've brought back the noise that Apple makes when they first boot up. So I'm not in this camp after watching Apple so many years. I'm not in this camp that they're going to just ignore what a lot of people prefer. I think that they try new things and try different approaches, and then they see how people react, and then they will act based on people's reaction. And I think that's part of the reason we're hearing that Apple wants to bring back the SD card slot and HDMI port and MagSafe on the MacBooks, is because that's what a lot of people are asking for. Even though they ditched all that, I think it's a little bit too early to say that the 24-inch iMac is the new normal. I think it could be, but Apple's probably going to wait and see what the sales of this thing are and what the public feedback is. And from what I can see, at least from my perspective, is that it's very mixed. Sure, you certainly have a lot of people that are chill with the design and even like the design of the 24-inch iMac, but you also got a lot of people on the opposite end. And I don't know if that's the direction Apple wants to take this in. Do they want a divisive design, or do they want a design that's pretty universally acceptable? Because that's how I felt about black bezels. White bezels I find controversial. Some people don't mind them, some people like them, some people hate them, some people love them. You kind of have a very mixed distortion across everything. But black bezels, I didn't see a lot of people complaining about black bezels. They were the only bezels on iMacs for like over 10 years. And I never saw people complain about the color of the bezel. I only saw people complain about the width of the bezel. So I think black bezels is a less controversial way to go. Pro users hate the distant gray bezels, but the average user does like distant gray bezels. I don't know if we can say that, though, because they use computer during the day, apparently, compared to pro users. Would you like jet black bezels because pro users use their computer in the afternoon till late at night, according to Apple Explains YouTube channel? Well, Apple Explains is good, and I'm sure he has his reasons, but I don't agree with that. I think average users use their screens at night a lot, because that's when they get home and they want to start browsing social media and stuff. If anything, that would make the 24-inch iMac sound more like a work computer, because that's typically when you're using a Mac, is when you're using your Mac in the daytime. I don't think it does look better in daylight. We have mobile products. iPhones have black bezels. You use those outside in direct sunlight. Same with iPads. iPad Air isn't a pro device. It's a mid-tier iPad, but it has black bezels. And the iPhone SE is like this budget entry-level model, and that got all black bezels, even on the silver option. And I recall everybody being fine with it, but anyway. Gilver, sorry, I don't know how to say this. Not sure if this has been discussed here already, but how did you appreciate Marquez's video on the Apple versus the paradox of choice? Remora fish sucked onto sharks. I liked the video. I thought he did a good job with it. Marquez is my favorite tech YouTuber. But I don't think he entertained the alternative quite enough. That's usually my biggest criticism when I see videos that entertain those subjects, is that they kind of go very quick to one side and they don't entertain the alternative. That's what I wanted to see Marquez or more people talk about, was what should Apple do? What would be the we're accusing them of being anti-competitive. What's the pro-competitive method? Do they just not release new things? Because I don't think that's realistic. Should they just not, even if they have the capability to make a better geo-tracking device than Tile, and they can integrate that into their ecosystem way better than Tile could ever integrate into Apple's ecosystem? So does Apple just not release new stuff? Like, I don't follow. Yeah, there's companies get squished, and that's what the free market is about. Companies trying to create. And Apple, in my opinion, by opening up the Find My network to third parties, has not shown signs of being anti-competitive. Anti-competitive would be making the Find My network only work for their devices and also pricing it at a loss to the point that it bankrupts all the competition, and then they raise the price afterwards. That's kind of what Google did. Yeah, the 24-inch iMac looks great in the dark in a box in a hole at the bottom of the ocean at night. Yeah, if I can't see it, it looks awesome. Let's see. Average consumers have bought black bezels on phones, iPads, and computers for years. I don't think they care much less prefer white bezels. Yeah, I think that if anything, average consumers don't care about the bezel. But in my opinion, the average consumer not caring about the color of the bezel is not a good reason to change it. Just because they don't care, Sorry for the lag. He leaves it to us to think about it, I think, but I agree with what you're saying right now. I know that's it. Marquez is very middle ground on a lot of subjects like that, which makes sense. But time for RGB bezels, right? RGB bezels, that's the future. No, to me, it's like going after a problem that didn't exist. There weren't a bunch of people complaining about black bezels, right? No, I didn't see anybody mad that iPhones and iPads and stuff only had black bezels. And yet now we're going the other way. And it's ticking off a lot of people, and some people don't mind it. There's not really that many people that love it. There's just a lot of people that are like, it's fine. But ultimately, I'm like, it's not about what's being fun. Like, what do you prefer? If you could only choose one color for bezels, for everything, watches, phones, TVs, would it be black or white? And most people would pick black. So I'd be like, okay, then just leave it as black. Why are we changing it? If it costs $29 per device to enroll it in the Find My network, that would be anti-competitive. I guess. I don't know how much it is. I'm not exactly sure if that's anti-competitive, but from the entire Apple lineup of products, which one do you think needs to be fixed, design-wise, prices, etc.? I don't know about design-wise. The iMac. Mac line. Yeah, iMac needs to be fixed. Prices are fine, but the design needs to be fixed. iPhone prices I'm generally fine with. Design-wise, I'm fine with the iPhones. Let's see. iPad just needs better software. Prices and design are fine with the iPad. I think it needs just better software. What about Marquez's about the right to repair video? I thought it was good. I enjoyed watching it. I'm always hesitant to talk about right to repair because obviously Rossmann told me that I don't solder, so I should shut up about the subject, and I have taken his advice best I could. I've pretty much shut up about it since then. Right to repair people get very angry very quickly if you don't agree with them. At least in my experience on Twitter and Discord and on the YouTube sphere. If you don't agree with Apple TV, definitely needs to be fixed. If you don't agree with the right to repair stuff, they take it personally very quickly. So that's why I'm hesitant to jump in that. But again, I did feel that it was a little too one-sided. I think that there's a little more to Apple making exclusive chip dealers with suppliers than just they want to screw the third-party repair shop. I don't think that's the only reason. I think there's other reasons. Because, if you consider every component that a developer makes that they don't put into a product is a product that isn't sold. And I'm sure that Rossmann is a very good repairman and he does great work for his customers, but not all repairmen are good. I think there's a lot of third-party repair shops that kind of suck, and I've heard countless stories of people going into third-party repair shops and having botched repairs and them charging them, and there's been all kinds of terrible stories of people trying to get their stuff fixed with third parties. So for Apple to devote parts of their chips away from the mass production, which is why the chips or components exist in the first place, so they can be put into hardware and sold. So kind of wanting to sign a contract with a third-party manufacturer that says, hey, we will take as many of these components as possible. I don't think there's, especially now during the chip shortage, I don't think there's just an infinite supply of every component of every device Apple makes. The reason they might, I don't know for sure. I'm an idiot in this subject, but the reason Apple is probably signing some of these contracts with these manufacturers is because they want as many components as they can get, because the more components they can get, the more inventory they can move. And they don't want to be supply constrained. That's not a healthy place to have your trillion-dollar company. You want to be able to make as many of these items as quickly as you can and at the largest scale. That way you can assure your profit margin. So devoting a bunch of your components and chips for third parties to buy up and then oftentimes do a botched repair or not a good repair. Some will be good. I'm not saying all will, but a lot of them won't. And then Apple gets a lot of the backlash for that. If a third-party repair shop does a bad battery replacement and then the iPhone explodes, the media is not going to bring that up. The media is just going to say an iPhone exploded. And then Apple has to deal with the repercussions of that. So I'm not trying to say it's all Apple's completely in the clear, like finding out about that iPhone repair program that Rossmann was talking about with like the 5-year audits and stuff like that. That sounds messed up. I don't think Apple's completely innocent here. I just think that the argument is a tad one-sided. I feel like people obviously don't want to side with a trillion-dollar company because, let's be honest, they don't need my help. They don't need a defense. But I do think that there's a tad more to it than just they want to screw third-party repair shops, so that's why they sign contract deals with part suppliers. I think there's probably a tad more as to why they sign contracts with part suppliers. For one, they don't want competition having access to it. If they open the door for one repair shop to buy components, then they got to open it up for everybody. And then before you know it, that manufacturer has got to be manufacturing tens of thousands of components that are not even going into the actual models. So they have to sell those at an extreme higher price and they have to, make a bunch of parts that don't go into the products, and then they don't have enough for their first party repairs that are going to be covered under warranty or through AppleCare. So it's a messy situation. I don't think there's a clear, definitive answer, but I do think the term right to repair is a little bit deceptive because that's not really what's up for discussion here. You're allowed, if it's your product and it's your device, you're allowed to open it up and tinker with it and mess around with it as much as you want. That's not a right that's being infringed upon. It's whether or not the company should be forced to also give you warranty or also give you more services after you modify the device beyond what the company is prepared for. If the company's not expecting people to open up their devices and repair for it, they're not going to have services and warranty and procedures in place for everything. No, we all know Rossmann is not the repair person who botches the repairs. He does great work, and he's very talented with how he's able to open up stuff and work on it. That's not who we're talking about. But the repair market, the third-party repair business is much, much bigger than Rossmann, for sure. For Louis Rossmann out there to want to repair their device, they're an average consumer is blowing up in their face. Yeah, I think there's a lot of dangerous ways it could go if you just start opening it up to everybody. And also that's going to hurt Apple directly if they let any third-party shop order whatever they want. So I can understand why they want to sign contracts and that kind of thing. I think it would be more adequate to say right to parts. I think is a more descriptive title to the movement, because most of this discussion I've seen is complaining about companies not wanting to sell components of their devices to third parties, which I think is a very complicated subject. And I don't think it's because, well, then third parties will repair our devices and we don't want that. We hate third party repair shops, so we're going to make it harder for them. It's like, I mean, it is fair to say that there's not really a lot of incentive for Apple to make it easier for third party repair shops. For one, because a lot of them don't do their job great. Some do, but not all. And all of the components that go to third-party repairs are components that are not going to first-party repairs or just actual selling of first-party hardware. I think there's more to it than that, but I'm no expert. I don't solder. I'm not a repair guy. I don't open up stuff. So feel free. I'm an idiot. I'm arrogant. I don't know what I'm talking about. But I just happen to believe there's more to it than that. And you're not going to get arrested. No one's going to break into your house and point a gun at you if you decide to open up your iPad and work on it, or open up your iPhone and try to fix it yourself. It's just the movement's more about, should a company be forced to provide you with the components necessary? And that's where I'm like, maybe they should, maybe they shouldn't. If it was a big enough thing that end consumers cared about, I feel like devices would be more repairable. But the fact that they get less and less repairable over time is probably evidence that average consumers don't care about repairing the devices themselves. And like Marquez talked about, tech is getting more and more well integrated and more efficient to the point that it's going to become near impossible to work on stuff in the future. If components get smaller, it's going to be very difficult to work on something like the M1 chip. And as components get smaller and smaller, it's very hard to work on something like an Apple Watch, which is an amazing product, and I love my Apple Watch, but if they would have tried to design it with repairability in mind, it would have been probably a much worse product overall. Wouldn't be as tightly integrated and as small and light and capable. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't love talking about right to repair because obviously people tell me I'm stupid all the time whenever I talk about it. And they're probably right. I'm not into that kind of thing. Technically, your right to repair is infringed because if I repair my screen on the 11 Pro Max, Face ID will stop working because I'm not a registered developer. So yes, your right is infringed because you lose functionality if you don't go with the Apple repair person. That wouldn't stop under right to repair. Apple would just have to give the unlocking tools to third-party shop. I don't think it's necessarily the same because you're not getting penalized, by, they're not like fining you for doing that. They're just saying like, we don't want to allow a certain thing because we don't know if you did it right, or we don't know if it's behaving the way we expect it to. I don't think it's the same as getting like legally punished. 100 bits from Neum says, why don't people ever get mad at other corporations? This all seems a bit suspect to me. You should know that Apple's not the only company that does this. You know, Samsung does this with their appliances. Only certain repairmen can repair Samsung appliances, and I'd argue people have more issues with their washer fridge than a smartphone. Oh yeah, I think Apple's just the biggest, richest company, so that's probably right. Yeah, they don't want to compromise the security of Face ID. That could be part of it. Again, there's a lot to this discussion I don't know much about, which is why I'm hesitant to talk about it. But like most things, I think they're more complicated than people make them out to be. I don't think it's as simple as Apple just hates you. That seems to be the end result for a lot of discussions. Well, you see, Apple just hates you personally, and they want you to be angry. I don't think it's that simple. But yeah, lots of other companies do the same thing. Apple's by far not the only one. Let's see. Looks like you could... Actions have consequences. I mean, if you have third-party open and after the device after specifically says not to do so, then Apple has the right to refuse them service. I think that makes sense because you got to imagine the extreme scenarios. You know, imagining a scenario when someone drives over their computer and like completely levels their MacBook and says, Apple, fix this. They should be able to say, no, this is broken beyond a point of we're not willing to work on it anymore, or you use the device in a way that it's not meant to be used, so we're not going to help you with that. Yeah, it's not that simple. Apple hates everyone. That's why they make so many great products, because they hate us. They just hate you. That's why they do it. They're mad and they're greedy. They want more money. How dare that company want money? Why doesn't that company directly help its competitors make more money? How dare they? Apple wants to have a first-party repair business that does okay. Why don't they directly help third-party repairs make repairs better than their internal repair? I don't know. Sometimes it gets a little silly. I'm like, why would they help you? I mean, I can make that argument for my own business. Like, I would argue getting products early gives you a pretty substantial advantage. Rene Ritchie, iJustine, your average consumer, they all have severely huge advantages over my channel because they get tech products from Apple way earlier than I do. That's not fair. How come Apple can't give me products early? That gives those YouTubers an unfair advantage. I'm going to sue Apple. How dare they? I don't know. Feels like the argument can go endless, but I appreciate the bits. They should just start driving truckloads of money to Epic Games. Gosh, come on. No, that would be considered an exclusive deal, which is also a monopolistic practice, right? Like, you can't do that. You can't give certain companies special privileges. They'll always lose. And, there's always a way to spin the argument into apple sucking. But I appreciate you for all tuning in. Thank you all for watching. Hope you have an excellent rest of your day. Take care, all. Bye-bye.